4 years ago, after just getting my degree, I decided it was time to leave my hometown and pursue my career. So I moved to a big city that was about 9 hours away from my parents and most of my family. I had no friends there for months, and my starting salary was low because I came into the company as a trainee. I was very demotivated and I missed my family a lot. At some point, I decided to go visit the relatives who lived by the coast, which was around 45 hours away by car. I didn't have a car though, and the buses were expensive. But my cousin told me about this Facebook group for rides between my city and another city that was close to their town. I went there and found myself a ride with some university students who were just a few years younger than me. The day for the trip came by. I met them, and in total it was like 5 of us in a wide sedan. A lady who was studying medicine, the owner of the car, her boyfriend, the driver, a sophomore girl who was friends with them, and a random young guy who found their ad on Facebook. Let's call him Mark. It was a Friday, and people from this whole region were infamous for drinking extremely often. So inspired by the warning that my cousin gave me, I awkwardly asked them, "Sorry to ask, but none of you have drunk recently or plan to do it on the trip, right?" The driver assured me that he was fully sober and that he wouldn't have any even if the passengers did. After hearing that, his girlfriend and the other girl assured that they wouldn't drink because their parents were very strict and wouldn't let them misbehave. Mark giggled when hearing that and whispered to me, "Women in their town are infamous for drinking a lot and denying it." The trip went on, and we went around dozens of mountains. We had a few conversations about university and work, but most of the trip was us listening to a popular singer from the 90s. After around 2.5 hours, the driver stopped the car at the gas station, as he needed the WC. Mark decided to go with him, as he wanted to get something from the store. A few minutes later, I see Mark and our driver come back to the car, each holding a 6-pack of cerveza. Well, actually, the driver was carrying 2 of those. I almost freaked out, but kept my composure and asked them if they were going to drink now. The driver said, "Oh, I won't until I'm done driving, but let the others and yourself take 1 or 2 if they want." Almost 2 hours later, we had left the mountains and arrived to a flat land. The sign said that we were just 1 kilometer away from the city. Suddenly, the car took a right turn, leaving the main road and heading towards the suburbs. The place looked desolate and most of the houses seemed empty. I thought it was a bit weird, but I didn't ask anything because I assumed that maybe we were dropping the other girl. They probably already knew where she lived. The dude then just parked the car in the yard of the abandoned house and said, "We're basically home. Are you guys down for some drinks?" And Mark was totally down with it, but the girls kept saying stuff as, "I'm not sure, I don't usually drink." "Okay, I'll make an exception, only because we had tough midterms." I refused and said, "But how are we going to get to the city? You guys agreed to take me to the bus station." They said that it was already very close and that in the worst case, I could just walk there. I was worried because I had planned to take the local bus at a certain hour to get to my cousin's town, which was still about an hour from there. They started drinking really fast, and the girls got to the point where they were trying to pee doing a handstand against the wall. I was desperate to leave by that point, but I didn't feel safe walking to the city because it was really dark out there, and this region had a bad reputation for crime. Outsiders were specifically more at risk too. There was no phone signal there, so I had to wait for these guys and see what they could offer me. They finally decided it was time to go home. I said it wasn't okay for any of them to drive anymore because they were all drunk and I offered to drive. However, the driver said, "It's not up to me, the car belongs to my girlfriend." However, his girlfriend refused, saying that she didn't even know me and that her dad wouldn't be okay with a stranger driving her car. I said that I understood that, but that we had to sort this out somehow. After a bit, the driver finally got out from the driver's seat. I assumed they wouldn't let me drive. I was sitting in the middle of the back seat, so I asked the guy next to me to let me get out of the car. The sophomore girl who was in my left did, but before I could stop her, she climbed into the driver's seat. The girl started saying, "Friend, please let me drive, it's close and there's no one outside anymore." The other girl said, "Okay, sure, but go slow, okay?" The previous driver got into the back seats with me and confined me back to the middle seat. I was getting upset and I wanted to stop her, but I didn't know how to because everyone seemed okay with the idea. My panic got even worse when this sophomore girl started asking them how to turn on the car and how to operate it. "You don't know how to drive a car?" I asked in despair. "No, I don't, it's my first time. My parents haven't let me learn," she answered. "Get down then, please. I have a driver's license. I can get you home safely," I said. But then the car owner told me I couldn't decide over her car and said that it would be okay, and that there was almost no one driving at this hour and that they would help her friend learn how to drive. I asked them to let me get off the car, but they wouldn't let me. They swore that it was a very short drive and that we could go slowly and that it would be okay. The girl really had no idea about how to drive. Unfortunately, this was an automatic transmission car. Had it been a manual one, she probably wouldn't have been able to even move it. And the car moved, but in the ways you would expect for it to move with a driver who had never stepped on the pedals of an actual car. She would hit the brake and steer the wheel too hard. She drove on the middle of the road and kept freaking out while the others yelled at her what to do. I was begging them to let me get out of the car, but they wouldn't listen to me. Fortunately, these streets were empty, but I couldn't help to fear that if any car came, we would for sure crash against it. Eventually, we made it to the street where the bus station was. As soon as they had pointed that out, I asked them to just stop the car already and let me walk there. But they did not. They forced me to be dropped in front of the station. I don't even know how I could get out of this sort of situation if I was in it again. This happened in the late 2000s when I was 12 years old. I grew up and live in a developing nation, so many of the folks who read here might not completely understand or relate to these circumstances in the incident, but I'll try my best to give any background necessary. I was never given permission to stay out after 7 p.m. for any reason, regardless of the requirement. A movie that ends at 6:30, and I was dropped home by my friend's parents. Nope. Study at my neighbor's house past 7 p.m. No. So I was naturally very excited when I got permission to go watch a late-night movie with all my cousins and stay the night at my grandmother's place. There were 6 of us together, 5 males and 1 female cousin. I was the youngest and the rest were all adults, about mid-20s. The movie finishes at 2 a.m. and we were asked to go straight from the movie theater to home, which was nearby. I was more excited to see the city late at night, more than watching the new movie that was a big hit. We all went in 3 motorcycles to the theater and decided that once the movie was over, we would go to a cafe that was open 24/7 to have some ice cream there. This was the only place that was still open, and it was relatively far away from my grandparents' house. I can't tell you how excited all of us were, because this was a new place that had opened up in my city and was very popular. My friends used to brag about how many times they visited the place, and how beautiful the view of the city lake is in the middle of the night. Once the movie was over and we came outside, except for the crowd from the theater, the roads were completely deserted. Not a soul in sight. Only the streetlights lit up the roads, filled with potholes and nothing. But even the medical stores were open. My female cousin had extremely strict parents, so she decided to come and said that she has to be home because her parents were up waiting for her to get back. We all tried to convince her to come with us. There were 6 of us after all, but to no end. She was adamant that she has to be home, and we eventually decided to let her go. There were 4 of us now, on 2 motorcycles, and we started riding towards the cafe. I was the pillion with my brother riding, and I noticed that 1 motorcycle was following us. It was easy as they were the only other people on the roads. I told my brother immediately. and he said that they were probably going to the same place and to just ignore it. A little further, another motorcycle asked my cousin to stop and pretended to ask for directions. They stopped, thinking these guys were lost, and started giving them directions. While we were talking to the guys asking for directions, 2 more motorcycles showed up and surrounded us, somehow 8 of them suddenly. At this point, we realized that this was an ambush, but it was already too late. One of the guys pushed my cousin from the motorcycle onto the ground and started hitting him. The rest of us were trying to defend him. Once the fighting stops, one of the cousins were bleeding all over already, and they start to ask us to call our female cousin and to tell her to come back. They had been following us from the theater. They said to tell her that they needed to talk to her, so to ask her to come back and he needs to see her. At first, we pretended that we had no women with us, and we didn't know what he was talking about. He told us that he would kill all of us if we didn't ask her to come meet us. The roads were abandoned and the occasional car that goes on the road would just pass by without slowing down. Most likely, the people in the car were afraid of getting involved. The guys were clearly having fun, laughing while they punched us and kicked us. With no help in sight, one of my cousins punched the guy and yells, "Run," and instinctively we all run in different directions, abandoning our motorcycles on the street. They started chasing us on foot at first, and then went back and got on their motorcycles chasing us through the streets. Now, I didn't have a phone with me and I was unfamiliar with the area. I ran randomly looking for a hiding place. I jumped a wall into a random person's house while the motorcycles drove by on the road looking for us. I don't know where the rest of my cousins were, especially the one who was bleeding pretty badly. The house that I jumped into was home to a huge dog who started barking at me, waking up the owners. They obviously assumed that I was there to rob them, but having one look at a 12-year-old boy in tears and clearly shaken, they asked me what had happened. I explained everything and told them that I had no idea where my brothers were. They gave me a phone and I called the police, who said they would send a car and we could expect it in 2 hours. I had all of my brothers' numbers memorized but didn't want to call them, as I was afraid they might be hiding and a ringing cell phone might give it away. I thanked the kind people who offered to host me until the morning, but I had to get back to my grandmother's place to find out if my cousins had made it back. I sneaked through the streets and found my grandparents' house. 2 of my cousins made it back, but my brother was still out there. Finally, he calls us and tells us that he's in hiding and will come back once the sun comes out, and there's general crowds outside. Until dawn, the motorcycles kept passing by our house and we were afraid they had followed one of us home. At dawn, my brother gets back and I was the only one uninjured. One of my cousins got stitches on his face and another one broke his ribs and my brother had a hairline fracture. We all ran through the night and suddenly, all these strict imposition by our parents make sense to us. My brother had called the cops too, but no one ever showed up. There was no support from anyone. And I can't even imagine what would have happened if my female cousin was with us. We never got a call back from the cops to ask if we were fine. I can't begin to imagine what would have happened if they had caught one of us. Needless to say, we never went out anywhere late at night for a long time. Some context. I was 26 and I'm a girl and I needed gas and it was around 11 p.m. on a Saturday. I pulled into a busy gas station to fill my tank, except it was completely bare, not a car in sight. I also live in Alaska and it was very cold this night, maybe -10. I was tired after work and just wanted to get home. Usually I start my pump and I sit in my car due to the freezing cold. But this time I had a weird feeling that I needed to stand by the pump, so I did. I just started pumping my gas when a little golden sedan pulled up right next to me. A guy got out and I was feeling hyper-vigilant for some reason. He started cleaning his clean windows as he put the squeegee back towards me. I felt like I wanted to run, but I stayed calm, and I continued pumping my gas. He asked me if I would help him put windshield wiper fluid in his car because he had ran out, and he didn't know how to open the hood. I laughed it off and told him that I didn't know either, which was a lie. He kept getting closer and closer to me while trying to lure me to his car by saying that there was something under his seat that he couldn't reach because he's too big. Now, I'm 5'2" and I'm petite, and this man was large and scruffy, think Alaska wilderness dude. At this point, I'm freaking out and hitting the call button on the pump. He took a step back and started to go back to his car. I thought that I was being smart, my gas was almost done. I looked in his car when I noticed the insides of the doors had no handles, except for the driver door, and that freaked me out. I was putting the pump back and opening my door, and he was right behind me. He slammed my door shut and yelled, "You're coming with me." Obviously, I refused and I was petrified. He grabbed my arm and slammed me against my car. I elbowed him as hard as I could, and I started to scream at the top of my lungs. But thank God for the gas attendant with a big gun that night, because if it wasn't for him, I don't know what would have happened. The attendant pulled the video, we made a police report, and I called immediately after the guy took off. I never heard anything else about it. I just hope that he didn't get some other girl all alone. I used to work in an industrial area that tends to be secluded and dark at night with minimal lighting along the roads. I also lived close to this previous job, so I would walk home instead of taking the bus. I can't drive. The bus routes tend to be awkward and have long wait times, so I usually just walk. One night in early October, I had been walking through a parking lot to get to my place. I had to walk through a few parking lots to get to it. However, the parking lots close to the main road were where these incidents occurred. Anyway, as I'm walking through a desolate parking lot, I'm listening to music and enjoying my walk when I get this suspicious feeling that I should look behind me. I look behind and see this individual wearing a hoodie or track pants, and it appears to be maybe a woman. This person is pale and seems to be watching me after emerging from the bushes and trees that she was hiding in. She picks up pace from behind me but continues walking horizontal to me. I ran across the main road, and when I looked back, I could see her standing next to a set of trees. She then realizes that I see her watching me and jumps behind a tree to hide. I go into some random apartments to hide from her and wait there for some time. I then left and went to my place, and I told my mom about this incident, and she said that I should have called the police. But now it doesn't stop there. So, now it's early November, and I have a weird feeling that there's someone in this parking lot that I'm walking through. I was walking through a different parking lot this time, as the previous parking lot had freaked me out because someone was watching me. As I'm walking through this parking lot, the person wearing a hoodie emerges from hiding behind a parked trailer talking on her phone. I'm now thoroughly freaked out and decide to pick up my pace and get to the main road as quickly as possible, without alerting this person that I feel threatened by them. As I'm getting ready to cross the road, this person decides to cross the road as well and watches me as I cross the road. I book it to the random apartment and hide in there until I assume she's gone. Now, the last time this happened was mid-November, a week after the second incident. I'm walking through the same parking lot that I saw her in the second time. It's dumb, I know. This time, she emerges from hiding behind a trailer and starts walking towards me. I decided to just run and get to the main road. I get across the main road and look back, and she's gone. I assume that she must have been hiding behind the trailer, as there is no way she could have gotten out of the parking lot in that time. I decide to hide in the same apartment building as well. Now, I've not seen her as it has been snowing, so it would be significantly easier to see her face, and it's too cold to wait out in the parking lot. I also no longer work there, so I no longer have to take that route to work. Now, it could have been a man as they were pretty tall, but I thought that I had heard her voice when she was talking on her phone, and when I saw her for the first time, I thought that she may have been a white female with dark hair. I have not gone to the police with this information, but I might. I doubt it'll do anything, but my mom thinks it might.